You're listening to episode 52 of A Whole New You podcast. On today's show, Lori interviews Deeannah Seymour, creator of pH-D Feminine Health, a natural solution created in conjunction with medical doctors aimed at solving a common problem for many women. They discuss important feminine health issues that often need to be addressed in a more integrative fashion. Deeannah also shares the very inspiring story of her journey to entrepreneurship. Welcome to A Whole New You podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Maravich. I'm a registered nurse and author of the book 360 Health. I'm joined by my dear friend, Lori Biddle, a health and wellness coach certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Our show exists to inspire and empower women to take charge of their health with weekly tips and conversation about self-care, mindset, nutrition, fitness, and clean living. Please keep in mind that the material provided in this podcast is intended as general information only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're thrilled to have you here. Let's get to the show. Before we get to the show, I would like to read a 5-star review that we received through iTunes. This one is titled Excellent Podcast and Top-Notch Information from Shanda Fulbright. She writes, "This podcast is a wealth of information. Kim and Lori talk about wellness from multiple perspectives and don't just focus on the physical health alone. Kim is one of the best interviewers I've listened to and really knows how to keep the conversation going while pulling out the best in the interviewee. This is one podcast I highly recommend and will motivate you to focus on a whole new you." Shanda, thank you so much for the compliments and for this wonderful review. Reviews help to boost our ranking in iTunes, and they help people find our show who might not know about it already. So if you are listening right now, why don't you pause the show and head over to iTunes? You can subscribe there and also leave us a rating and review. If you do, we will be sure to read your review on a future episode. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to another episode of A Whole New You podcast. Today I have Deeannah Seymour. She developed pH-D Feminine Health in 2014 as an alternative to antibiotics for treatment of yeast infections and bacterial vaginosis. After 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry, Deeannah wanted a remedy backed by published clinical studies. She found hundreds of studies on the use of boric acid vaginal suppositories to treat vaginal odor and itch. However, these suppositories were only available through compounding pharmacies and were not commercially offered. She validated the effectiveness and set a goal to make this remarkable therapy available to millions of women. Deeannah partnered with a highly respected healthcare company, Vireo Systems, and began producing boric acid suppositories in an FDA-registered facility with pharmaceutical-grade boric acid. And so pH-D Feminine Health was born. pH-D Feminine Health has successfully treated hundreds of thousands of women and became the best-selling treatment for vaginal odor and itch in online sales. It is embraced by the medical community and written into treatment protocols at several elite medical centers. This is a really important topic, and we so appreciate you being here with us today, Deeannah, to go over this topic with our listeners and, bring up something that maybe people don't always ask openly. We're going to talk about it today, and we are going to find, that nice holistic approach that we love so much on this podcast. So thank you for taking time out of your day and being here to talk to us about your product.
It is my pleasure, Lori. Thank you so much for having me. This is an issue that, at some point, at least 70% of all women will deal with at some point in their lives. And so it's a fact of life, and it happens. And, I want to remove the stigma associated with these issues and discuss it openly, because it's important for women to know that there are alternatives out there for them.
100%. I agree. So let's start out with how your pH-D Feminine Health product works and how it's different from other products that are out there on the market for us.
Sure. Yeah, great question. pH-D works, oftentimes if women have an issue with vaginal health, it's because their vaginal balance is is out of whack. And pH-D works to naturally, lower that pH in the vagina so that uh, other issues don't occur. And it works naturally in doing that. It's a natural ingredient. And interestingly enough, boric acid has been around for probably over 100 years. And physicians and healthcare providers have known that of its efficacy, but it just wasn't available, commercially up until we started producing it. So it's an alternative essentially for prescription products and also for other over-the-counter products. And a lot of times when women take a prescription medication, there's, it catalyzes a lot of other issues, uh, in the body. So this again works naturally to restore vaginal balance, and especially with vaginal odor. When women have an issue with that, it's recurrent 60% of the time, and a lot of things can cause that. It could be, nearing menopause. When that happens, your hormone levels fluctuate, and that causes an elevation in the vaginal pH. And no matter what medications you take, because that vaginal balance is out of whack, it's going to continue, odor is going to continue to occur unless the vaginal balance is adjusted. But also, oftentimes, uh, you know, woman having her period or intercourse can also cause issues. And you can actually use this product preventatively to keep it from occurring, unlike any
Mm.
other product on the market, especially with vaginal odor. If we're inserting a pH-D anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, will restore the balance and prevent any odor from occurring. Or inserting one after intercourse or during or after your period will also restore the balance and prevent any issues from occurring as well. So it's the only product that can be used preventatively uh, to restore vaginal balance.
Well, that's really interesting and really powerful because, like you said, a lot of the treatments that we're using that are available to us through our doctors, through our drugstores,
Hmm.
um, do have other side effects and are creating other issues a lot of times. And, especially antibiotics, that's,
Yeah.
we're constantly taking antibiotics. We are, you know, compromising our gut health, which is compromising our immune system. And, like you said, so many different things. It's kind of like the domino effect, where if we have an option, especially to prevent getting to these, to the point where we have a major issue,
Yes.
that's so wonderful. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, especially for women, like I said, that suffer with vaginal odor, and particularly, it is, recurrent 60% of the time, and it's debilitating.
Hmm.
I have had so many healthcare professionals and also customers tell me that, of course, it interferes with intimacy. That's a no-brainer, but also, not wanting to go to the gym to work out and not wanting to get in a bathing suit. Or I've had countless women tell me they couldn't even go get a pedicure because they were fearful that someone would smell them. And it is, like I said, debilitating in so many ways, but also to your self-esteem
Yeah.
for women. Because of course, the first thing you think, it's a hygiene issue, like, oh my goodness, I'm not clean enough. And it has absolutely nothing to do with that at all. It is simply an imbalance, and until that imbalance is corrected, you know you can And then in that process, a lot of women, clean themselves too much, which makes things even worse because it further destroys that vaginal balance. So it's all about educating women to know that there is an alternative and it's not their fault, and there's something they can do, to keep this in check. A lot of times women will suffer with it for, you know, I've heard several women tell me they've suffered with it for 20 years.
Wow.
And it's been this vicious cycle of going to the provider, getting your treatment, and then they're back in their office 4 to 6 weeks later. And just so frustrating for them. And it's ruined relationships. It's I've heard countless times that, all of a sudden my healthy marriage, I developed this issue with vaginal odor, and my spouse or significant other thinks that I'm being unfaithful when that's not the case. It just happens. It just happens, and it's natural. So, really talking about it, having an open discussion, and removing the stigma associated with it has really been part of my mission.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And it's true. And you think about all the different situations that it can impact, and mostly just the way you feel about yourself, you know?
Yeah, self confidence is ruined.
Now, we'd like to take a minute to give a shout out to our show partners, Perfect Supplements and Amazon. Perfect Supplements is a family owned and operated business that supports local farms. Their superfoods and supplements are non GMO, third party tested for purity, and contain no synthetic ingredients, colors, or flavors. They're also organic or wild harvested and fairly traded. Products range from collagen and bone broth powders to plant proteins, greens, desiccated liver, and adaptogenic herbs. Perfect also carries vitamins and supplements from other reputable sources like Just Thrive, Dr. Mercola, Gaia Herbs, Green Pastures, Garden of Life, and Prescript Assist. To check out their wide array of products, go to perfectsupplements.com/Kim. If you use coupon code KIM10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. This is a great way to get superfood nutrition while helping to support our podcast. And just as a disclaimer, it's not the intention of our podcast to provide specific medical advice, but rather to provide you with information to better understand the role of dietary supplements in health. We urge you to consult with a qualified health provider to discuss both the advantages and risks of using dietary supplements. Our other show partner, Amazon, is the largest online warehouse and carries just about everything you need. If you shop on Amazon, which is likely, you can support our show at the same time at no additional cost to you. Simply use our affiliate link to enter the site, then browse and buy, just as you normally would. A Whole New You podcast will make a small commission from your purchase, which helps to support production costs for the show. You can find a clickable Amazon link in the show notes for this episode. You can also go to the products page of our website, awholenewyouPodcast.com, to find the link. If you love our show and appreciate the free information you get each week, please consider buying from Perfect or using our affiliate link when making purchases on Amazon. Now let's get back to the show.
Well, thank you for creating this product to help women with this. So,
Yeah.
so what motivated you to start your own company, and what all goes into like creating a product like this and getting it out on the market?
Well, yeah, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And I'm a very spiritual person as well. And I believe that God can use very challenging circumstances to create wonderful things as a result of that. And uh, as it turns out, I was on a ton of antibiotics for some uh, sinus issues that were chronic. And when that happened, it completely destroyed, my vaginal balance and caused a whole host of issues. And I wanted something, I wanted a natural alternative. But after having spent 20 years, in the pharmaceutical industry, I really wanted something backed by published clinical data. And I found hundreds of studies done on the use of boric acid, but no one was making it commercially. And here's one of those circumstances where God had a plan, and that my daughter's hockey coach happened to own and manufacture. Uh, he makes products for holistic products for people and pets, and he has a manufacturing facility. So I went to him armed with my published clinical data on this ingredient and told him that I thought this would be, a remarkable solution for women. He took a gamble on me and my idea and started producing it. And within 6 months, it was the best selling product in its category on Amazon. And clearly, there was a need for it, and a lot of women were actually making their own boric acid suppositories at home, or physicians were referring their patients to compounding pharmacies to have it made, which was extremely expensive and really inconvenient. So I also consulted with several OBGYNs throughout this process who kind of helped with the development of it. And they were ecstatic to know that there would be, something available to their patients, readily available rather than having to send them through a compounding pharmacy. Um, so
And do you
that's,
find a lot of gynecologists referring their clients
oh
to
my
your product?
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. We get requests for samples daily because we do have a sampling program, and it's become, a first line therapy for lots and lots of healthcare providers. I've had countless OBGYNs and nurse practitioners in women's health tell me that I have completely, well, my product has completely changed the way that they practice medicine. And it has been, I've had physicians and nurse practitioners come to me, tears in their eyes because they have stories of patients that this product has impacted. And I've had customers come up to me and hug me and thank me because it is such an intimate issue that really, like I said, can be debilitating. So it's been so affirming to know that uh, I'm actually doing exactly what God intended. And honestly, Lord, never in a million years would I have thought that this would be my path.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of I said yesterday in a meeting, I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you followed that calling, and what an inspiration. What an inspiring story. We have a lot of women, listeners that are entrepreneurs or that have these great ideas. And, sometimes you don't know how to even get started. You don't know where to go. And a lot of us, we let that fear take over, right?
Right,
To
right.
get out there and take a chance and put ourselves out there and be vulnerable. But how did you find that courage to be vulnerable in that situation?
Well, if I weren't vulnerable, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Yeah.
I mean, really, did I ever think in a million years I would be on a podcast talking about vaginal health? No, I didn't. It's really, I mean, honestly, it's not really how I'm wired, but I'm changed. And, I was a single mom working in the pharmaceutical industry, and I really had my entire life planned out for me in my head, which
Hmm.
God was laughing at me. And I was going to retire. I had 10 years before I could retire, and, PhD was over here doing well. And I was like, you know what? I can use that as a college fund for my kids, supplemental income. And then sometimes God has to really like smack you upside the head to get your attention.
Hmm.
And that happened to me. Um, well, in a couple of ways. I uh, had this experience where I was called to be a living organ donor for a friend of mine's 4-year-old son. And through that process, And again, never in a million years would I have thought that I would have donated a kidney. It wasn't on my radar. But God allowed me to come in contact with two people throughout my career in pharmaceuticals who I became very close to, who became living organ donors. And that in itself was pretty miraculous because there's only a little over 5,000 living donors per year. And the fact that I became close friends with two of them in the whole US within 6 months of each other was pretty remarkable. But what was happening with that was God was preparing my heart to be a donor when the time came, and it came very quickly. And I knew immediately when I saw that this little boy needed a kidney that I was going to be the match. It was that peace that surpasses all understanding that I was given, and I knew before I was even tested, I knew that I was going to match with Jake. So it was through that process that I really learned to listen to God and to know when I was being led. And that happened, you know, as PhD was, as I was continuing to work for the pharmaceutical company, and PhD was plugging along. And then all of a sudden in my pharmaceutical career, God was trying to get my attention, and I was dealt a manager that was exceptionally difficult. And we just, for some reason, could not see eye to eye, even though it was a top performer. And I remember sitting on my steps, crying, trying to, so my kids wouldn't see me, thinking, why are you allowing this to happen to me, God? Why am I never been more successful, but yet it's not enough? And then it just had just prayer, and it just washed over me that God was trying to make me uncomfortable to get me to make a move that I wouldn't have done. I mean, I had fantastic benefits. I had a company car. Everything was perfect being a single working mom. But God had to make me, you know, realize that that was not his intentions for me. I was not supposed to stay and retire. I was supposed to leave and take the leap of faith and run the business and make this product available, to the millions of women like myself who had needed it. So it was then that I again had that peace that when you know you're in God's will, that everything's going to be okay. And I knew that if I failed, the worst thing that would happen, I would go get another job. I knew that, but I had to do it because God was telling me to. And again, he granted me with that peace that you really can't explain. And it was through that. I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, I left my job and took over the business full time, and I had some major setbacks the first year, and it was really, really difficult. But then all of these doors started opening, and it was just total affirmation that, yes, I'm on the correct path. And, when you're in God's will, you just know it. And since then, so many doors have opened up for us, for retailers, that, we kind of feel like we're strapped to a rocket ship some days, which is great.
Oh my gosh, I can relate to your story so much. I have a very similar experience. My background wasn't pharmaceuticals, but it was corporate accounting and finance.
Mm-hmm.
Spent 20 years in that industry, and the year that I turned 40, that was almost 4 years ago. I had an issue with the manager. I mean, like very
Mm-hmm.
similar to your
Wow.
story. And I got very uncomfortable in the position that I had been very comfortable in for many, many years. And yes, I think that is what forced me to make this change, and pursue my passion,
Yeah.
and be on this podcast here with you today.
And that,
So
I have goosebumps. That's
I
amazing.
know, I know. And I also have two teenage children, like just very,
Oh,
yeah, I could
similar
very
paths.
similar paths. Your story resonates so much with me. But I give you so much credit because
Well,
I know it isn't easy, and I know how much determination and perseverance it takes, and how much rejection we face, when we get uncomfortable and make a change. It doesn't mean that everything always goes our way. So
right,
it's
exactly.
it's learning. You learn a lot about yourself and who you are, and that's something you can feel really good about, how you react in the face of that rejection, and how you handle it, and then you come out on the other side stronger.
That's so true. And you know what, Lori? We both are examples of you're never too old to try
Right,
something new. I mean,
right.
I was my 40s and I completely pivoted and became an entrepreneur. You did the same.
Yep.
So it's never too late. And you know, so many amazing things have happened for me that I feel like I'm a completely different person now in my 40s, a much better person than I've ever been in my entire life. I've learned so much more about myself, just like you said, throughout this journey that has really strengthened me, in so many, different aspects of my life. And I'm sure you probably can say the same.
Yeah, it's okay to get uncomfortable, and it's good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what is the biggest piece of advice? And this is a challenging question. I'm thinking about it even for myself. And I recently have a high school student who's been shadowing me. So, I've had to give
Mhm.
a lot of thought to these types of questions. But what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's entering the health industry? Just given your journey and what you've been through.
Sure. Well, I feel like the health industry, especially, is becoming so saturated with a lot of gimmicky products.
Hmm.
And, there's a huge trend towards natural, which is great,
I love
and
that. Yes.
I love it too. But in that, there's also a lot of noise, with products that really aren't probably, you know, validated in their efficacy or therapeutically.
Hmm.
And I feel like that if you're going to enter the industry, that you need to absolutely be on the up and up. I have been guided by physicians in the healthcare industries since day one. That's been my, mission because I understand the physicians and nurse practitioners that recommend my product are my influencers. And, if your physician or healthcare provider tells you to do something, you're more than likely going to do it.
Right.
And I just feel like it's so important if you're entering in the health industry to make sure that whatever it is you're selling is is efficacious and, is legit. Uh, so there's a lot of snake oil, so make sure that whatever it is you're selling, and I would also try and get the advice. Reach out to a healthcare provider and get their input on whatever product, that you are looking to sell, uh, because I feel like it's so important. If you have healthcare professional buy-in, then it's that you're on the right path.
And I feel like that's the beauty of like the integrated approach, right? Like you've got
Hmm.
the medical advice, but you also have like the more natural, holistic product. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so true.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, your product that's called it's called pH-D Feminine Health, correct? If
Correct.
if I were to go on Amazon today, I could just search that and your products would be available there on Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. They're also at all Target stores nationwide.
Okay, I did not know that. Wonderful.
Yeah, and we're also around 2,000 CVS stores and
Okay.
actually several countless independent pharmacies as well. We're in approximately 8,500 retail locations nationwide right now.
Well, I'm very excited about your product. I'm very inspired by your story, and I know that our listeners will be too.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you so much.
you know, thank you for being here with us today and just setting such a great example for women in this industry and this great product and kind of um, bringing up a topic that I have to admit, full disclosure, I was even a little nervous talking
I'm
about
sure.
myself on the podcast. I have teenage daughters, and if they listen to this, they're going to like kill me
Roll their eyes.
because I was saying they're going to kill me for saying what I'm saying right now. But pretty much like leading up to this, I kept telling them, "Well, girls, I'm going to be saying the word vagina a few times on a podcast," and they're like, "No, you're not! Oh my gosh!" So,
Mom!
Mom, no, yeah. So I'm like, I got to wrap my head around it. I'm going to say the word vagina on the podcast, and
There
so
you go.
yeah, and we needed to. This is important. We are women and we need to talk about this stuff. And what better space than this group of women that Kim and I have brought together and this, group of loyal listeners that we have who are always looking for natural solutions. So, this is just a
I
perfect
love
fit.
it. I was getting ready. You took the words right out of my mouth. It truly is a perfect fit. And I'm so grateful that you took a leap of faith and invited me to be a guest. So thank you so very much.
Yes, yes. And anything else that you would like to say in closing here today?
No, we'd love to have, we often send out different announcements to
Mm-hmm.
our followers. So you're welcome to go to our website, phdfemininehealth.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook under the same um, title and subscribe to our emails because we've got lots of really, really exciting products coming out the first part of next year, which I am really eager to educate women on. So there'll be great feminine hygiene products that will be a natural alternative, just like our vaginal suppositories. So
Oh, that's great. Okay. And I'm going to put direct links in our show notes just to make it really easy for people to just click on to follow you and go to your website. And all of that will just be right underneath the podcast episode in iTunes, and they can click right on it. So,
that's perfect. Thank you so much.
all right. Well, thank you for being here and for sharing all this wonderful information with us.
Sure. Thanks again, Lori.
That's it for today. For more from Kim, you can go to kimmaravich.com. For more from Lori, go to simplympoweredllc.com. We're always open to listener questions or suggestions for the show. You can email those to contact@awholenewyouPodcast.com. We'd also love it if you joined our Facebook community and followed us on Instagram. Just search for A Whole New You Podcast. And lastly, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review in iTunes, we would really appreciate that so more people can find our show and join our community. We'll see you next week.